welcome to Walk the Walk. I'm Roy Counts, and today I'm at the Parnell Rose Gardens, and I'm with someone who may just be the kingmaker in this year's election. Welcome to the show, David.
Hey, Roy, thanks for having me on.
Well, David Seymour is, as you know, the leader of the ACT Party, and he actually does hold the keys to government. That's what I think, David. What do you think? Do you think you will make it with 7 or 8 MPs in this?
Well, Roy, I think it's up to the voters, but here's the proposition.
Yeah.
Our country, like never before, needs some certainty and a roadmap to recovery out of these crazy times.
Right.
And the ACT Party's proposition is, how would you like to have a group of sensible, independent-minded MPs providing better ideas for our country's future, holding them all accountable.
Right.
So that's why you might give your party vote to ACT.
Fantastic. So we're going to talk a lot about your background, your journey into politics, but let's begin first with the ACT Party. So the ACT Party, I think, was started in the early 90s, 1993, I think, by Roger Douglas. And it was a party which actually it has done well in Parliament till about, I think, 2011. So there was a time, I should tell the viewers, that the ACT Party had up to 9 MPs in Parliament, I think during the time of Richard Prebble. Do you think you can replicate that again now?
Well, the polls are saying that we can actually return 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 MPs, depending on which polls you look at. We're doing pretty well. But of course, I always say it's up to the voters. I'm first and foremost a Democrat and a New Zealander, and then an ACT MP. So my first priority is we have free and fair elections and a high quality exchange of ideas. And if the voters make the choice, then actually they might find that having a lot more ACT MPs improves the quality of discussion in our parliament.
Right. So let's talk about the centre and centre-right parties. Okay, so we have National, which is centrist. Some people would say they are leaning left now. And then we have you a little more to the right. So you would probably describe yourself as a liberal rightist?
I mean, people get all mixed up with the different terminology. But I would just say, look, in practical terms, some people believe in state control. They want the government to decide more things, take more of your money, make more rules, control you. And then there's personal freedom. And we always come out on the side of personal freedom. Okay. So, David, let's begin with your political journey. I've read, while doing research on you, that you were from Whangarei. You have got a degree in electrical engineering and in philosophy. And then you had a stint in Canada. So let's talk about your growing up in Whangarei. You mentioned something interesting. You said that you had, or maybe your family had an electrical business. And you learned a lot about, cash flow and all of that. Talk us through that, that that's
part
right.
of it.
I mean, look, the background music to my childhood was growing up in a family that ran a business. And so I'd hear about exchange rates and the effect of exchange rates on copper prices, which affects the price of cable. If you sign the contract before you can buy the cable and the price changes, that's a real problem. Labour disputes, problems with employment. Sometimes most people come to work and do a great job, but sometimes people don't. And just practical things. They did work in the Pacific Islands where all sorts of things could go wrong because you're a long way from help. So, my background was learning about what it actually takes to deliver a contract and make payroll every fortnight. And my grandfather used to say about payroll, it's a lot of money on Thursday, son. And, I heard Grant Robertson say, the economy restarting, it'll be like turning on an oven. Really? I mean, the way they think about the economy, it's just this thing that gives you money. It's actually a whole lot of people who get up every day and do practical things to create goods and services that customers can afford and also provide jobs that people want to do at a wage they're prepared to do it for.
Where do you think current government is failing? Now, I'm going to talk to you about COVID in a short while, after I finish talking to you about your, childhood and your political journey. But I just want to digress into where do you think they're failing?
Look, the problem with this government is that it's all about, you ever been to a sausage sizzle? Well, they got lots of sizzle, but they don't have the sausage, so they sell the sizzle and they do great marketing. I mean, you look at Kiwi Build. When they launched that policy, they had Dave Dobbin singing "Welcome Home" outside a house, and then Jacinda was there, and the TV cameras were there. It was all going to be wonderful. You know what? One small problem. The policy didn't actually work. You know? So great marketing, terrible delivery. Another way I could put it, you know, they can do the dance, but they can't do the delivery.
That's right. I mean, I often say that they, you know, do the talk but not the walk. Just to...
well, exactly. Well, see, we're doing the walk now. So there you go. But I mean, look, that's and ultimately it comes down to problem definition. It's like if you look at the Kiwi Build thing, the problem is not the price of houses. The problem is the price of sections, and you got to analyze the data and define the problem. Otherwise, you'd never come up with the right solution. So if you want, in a nutshell, great marketing, no problem definition, and the solutions don't work.
So one of the big influences in your life has been your mother. And she was very unique in the sense that she was one of the, I think, last people in the Western world to have suffered from polio. And when she was growing up, I read somewhere that they said that she wouldn't be able to do anything. But she ended up actually being a remarkable woman. Can you talk us through that?
So look, my mum was one of the last people in the Western world to contract the polio virus. And she was born the year that they brought the vaccine here. But she missed out. So I've always been in favour of vaccination, so was she. But because she was disabled in the 1950s, you know, back then we treated disability differently. It's quite mean. And so people said, look, you'll never walk, but she had amazing operations that allowed her to walk, lots of help from physiotherapists. They said you never drive, never have children, never have you know, a degree, and you never work properly. So she got a master's degree in pharmacy. She became the chief pharmacist at the Northland DHB. She had children, me and my two brothers, and I always say they were half right about her driving, which wasn't that good. But you know, so but it's a story about individual determination. An ACT says you can make a difference in your own life and the lives of those who you care about. You don't have to be just fodder for politicians and their grand government schemes.
So what do you make of the welfare state, or rather the way welfare is administered in this country?
Look, the welfare state's been a total disaster. And here's the thing. You can't just assess it by all the people who have done well if those people would have done well anyway. So there's a lot of people who have done well but didn't need help. The people that need help are the people that are really suffering and badly off. And so you got 300,000 working age adults on a benefit before the COVID crisis. You know, that some of them been on the same benefit for generations, and that's a disaster. I mean, the real issue right now is that in the wake of COVID-19, this government has borrowed $140 billion. You know, that's $200 billion of debt. You divide that by the number of families. If you're a family of 5, the government just borrowed $200,000 on your behalf. Now, for the party that's supposed to be on the right, campaigning to spend even more money is irresponsible.
So let's go back again to, you know, your growing up years. So after you grew up in your teens, you were in Auckland University. You, I think, are an electrical engineer, and you also did philosophy. And then you went off to Canada.
That's right.
So and you worked in a think tank. So you know, so and from the last few minutes that you've been talking about, it's very clear that you are a person who you know, who's an analyst, and you think, and you know, you are into, you know, numbers. You don't just come and, you know, just say things, you know, from thin air. So talk us through how it was to work with a think tank, and how do think tanks actually influence politics?
Well, I started off as an electrical engineer, so I did that for a while. I got offered this job in Canada doing something totally different. So I stopped being an engineer. I went and worked for a think tank. And the way to think about it is it's like a private university that does its own research and tries to influence government. So we used to have lots of battles about taxes and taxi regulations. You know, I was saying a long time ago that if the taxi industry didn't reform, then something like Uber would come along and blow it out of the water. And that's happened. So it was all about trying to get ideas into government before they happen.
And I think that's the great thing about think tanks, that they actually, using data and research, they can actually predict how things will pan out in the in the future. Yeah.
Well, and it's about defining the problem. So if the government listened on housing, it would have realised the problem's a lack of sections, not a lack of houses.
Right.
And if they solved the right problem, they'd get a better solution.
Right. Yeah. So after you came back from Canada, you actually were actually part of the ACT Party as a youth. What do you call it? The young.
Yeah, ACT on campus.
ACT on campus. That's it. Yeah. So you were actually already a member of ACT at that time.
Well, I didn't get involved until I was about 22. I think it was the 2005 election that I stood and I joined. So I'd been a little bit involved the year before that.
I see.
But no, I wasn't a sort of tragic teenage, person like that. I was in my 20s by the time I got involved.
So in 2005, when you stood against Helen Clark from Mount Albert, did you think you had a ghost of a chance to beat her? Because ACT actually had nine MPs in the previous parliament.
Yeah. So well, I didn't think I'd win Mount Albert off Helen Clark, but like most ACT candidates, I was standing because then as now, it was the party vote that mattered. So, and I think I got about 740 party votes in Mount Albert. So that was my real goal. And I got more party votes there than electorate votes, which was good because ACT candidates outside the Epsom electorate are trying to get the party vote.
Right. I just want to digress a little bit because I just thought of it now that I saw an item on TV about your car. You have built a car and you built it over many years. Tell us about it, and we'll come back to politics in a minute.
Well, so when you're 14 or 15, you think you can do anything, right? And I was like that. So I designed this. I got this design out of this book called "Build Your Own Sports Car from as little as 250 pounds." It was an English book. And there's something in that from as little as, so costing a lot more than that. But I started off with tubular steel, and I was literally, saving up to buy each tube just about as a student. I welded it all together.
Yourself?
Yep. And then eventually, actually, I did get a professional to do some of the welding because it had to meet standards, and I'm not a certified welder, but welded most of it. And then I got the whole thing registered, put an engine in it and stuff. And the thing is still registered and road legal. You're still allowed to drive it.
I saw you driving it on TV. And it sounded quite good.
It's good fun. It sounds great.
It does sound good. But is it? Is it something? Can you go far? That's what I mean. Or is it just?
Well, it's not the most comfortable thing, and it's got no roof, so you got to hope it doesn't rain. So it's a bit more fun than fun than function, I got to say. But there you go.
So after you came back from Canada and you joined the ACT Party, and you stood in the first elections, talk us through what happened after that. Because then the party started, sort of going down under. I think from 7% you came down to 1% and you only had 2 MPs that year.
So ACT had a difficult 10 years, basically, but it's recently started to recover, and I think it's recovering because we've been really, really principled. I've been won against 119 in Parliament. If I think something's wrong, I'll say so. But we've also been really constructive. So, while we stood against every party, we've also been prepared to work with every party. And I think that's been a really, really great thing.
Like what you mentioned, 1 against 100, actually I think is literal because during the gun law, buyback, you were the only person who voted against it. 119 to 1, and you were that one dissenter.
That's right. And look, those laws were wrong. I mean, it's not about guns. There was 1.5 million guns in New Zealand before, and there's 1.5 million guns in New Zealand now. That hasn't changed. The question is, do we have good laws? And these laws have basically created massive distrust. They've alienated a group of people, and they've really damaged New Zealand's reputation in a lot of ways. So I think it's important that we actually close the loopholes that the Christchurch terrorists use instead of just bluntly trying to punish a bunch of people who did nothing wrong.
So what is the solution actually? Because the gun owners, I've spoken to quite a few of them, I've interviewed some of them, and they are actually very angry because they use guns for recreation or target practice or whatever it is. And apparently what I've been told is the laws actually also apply in the firing range. It's not about carrying a gun on the street. So what is your stand on that?
Well, the 3 latest laws that they made, or the 3 big changes in the latest law. So invading the doctor-patient relationship. So if you have a firearm license and you go see your doctor about mental health, they have to report it to the police. That's terrible. Registering all firearms sounds sensible, incredibly dangerous. One of the most dangerous things the government can do is make a list of where every firearm in New Zealand is, because if they lose it, that's a steel to water list. And finally, they put a whole lot of rules and regulations on the way that gun clubs have to operate that really mean that people won't operate the clubs. Some clubs will just fold because they can't do the admin. And then people will go and just fire guns out the back of the farm or do stupid and dangerous things. So look, all of those things are really worrying. But what we need to do is solve the real problem. How did an Australian terrorist manage to get a license and buy the ammunition and do everything he did, and no one even asked him what was going on? So we've got to fix the system, but we've also got to restore trust in the system.
Let's talk about two of your two things that you did when you were in Parliament. One is you worked on the charter schools. So talk us through that. Do we need charter schools or no? How does it work? And should the government fund it or no?
I believe that if you're born in New Zealand, you have the right or the entitlement to education funding. And I think that we should have that, because some people have parents that either can't or won't pay for an education. So I think there's a good case for the taxpayer to fund your education. Here's the next question. Should you be able to take your share of the funding to a school that you choose? So ACT policy is a student education account. We set up an account for you. It's restricted. You can only take the money to certain registered institutions, but you can take your share of the education funding where you want to go. So if you want to keep taking it to your state school, fine. You want to go to a different state school, fine. If you want to take it to a private school, fine. If you want to take it to a charter school, fine. So, we're saying we're going to put the parents in charge of their share of the education budget, instead of just saying, oh, the government's running a school, if you don't like it, go,
So it's all about choice.
It's all about using your share to choose your education.
So you did a lot of hard work in this space, and then Labour came and undid all of that.
So charter schools were a great option. And particularly an option for kids who are disadvantaged. We got too many kids in this country who never get an opportunity. And those kids, you talk about fees free. These kids don't even get to go at all. So, we've got to do better for disadvantaged kids, for the country, for the next generation. We've got to do better. And charter schools did that.
What you're saying is that if the government is using taxpayers' money, the people using that money should have the choice to go to the type of school that they want.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the taxpayer should fund an education for every child. But we need more types of education. I'll just give you an example with charter schools. So one of the big problems is kids that don't even go to school. And what these charter schools did is they realized that was a problem. So they hired people. Like one school hired Filippo Levy, the former Otago Highlanders lock. And if you don't go to school, Filippo Levy will come around to your house, and then you go to school. But seriously, he was a great mentor, and the kids looked up to him. A lot of the kids have no male role models. So to have a guy who used to play rugby for the Highlanders was huge. And the school could hire someone like that because they had the flexibility. We think we should fund schools like that. Now, they save money on other things, like they didn't have flash buildings. But anyway, we think we give them flexibility and they'll do a lot better.
So talking about rugby, again, just to digress, I read somewhere that you actually coached rugby when you in your youth, did you?
I coached rugby at Auckland Grammar for 5 years.
Did you?
We won the championship 1 year.
Wow.
And then I coached rugby in Canada for 2 years. And what I learned coaching rugby in Canada is that the players I had at Auckland Grammar were very good players.
So you're not
wasn't
just
my coaching.
So you're just not a numbers person and not a policy analyst only. You've got a lot of other interests.
Well, everyone does if you start thinking about all the things you do.
I heard that you also a bit of a musician.
No, mate. You know why I had to do Dancing with the Stars? Because my music's even worse.
While we were coming, for the shoot, my daughter asked me if I'm going to ask about Dancing with the Stars, and I said no, I don't think, because everyone is talking about your twerking, especially Winston Peters. So that actually gives a good segue what's this about you and Winston Peters? You needle him and he comes back. I mean, is it ideological? Is it just fun? Is it what?
Well, I just think, the guy's had a huge opportunity. He's really had his time. He got some political talents, and he's had a lot of time in Parliament.
Yeah.
Lots of opportunities to make New Zealand a better place.
Right.
And he's always, at the end of the day, it's always about him.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's time for him to go. But I also think, some of the stuff he's done is particularly nasty.
Yeah.
Attacking former staff members.
Yeah.
I mean, if the guy can't fill out his own superannuation form properly, that's his fault. He doesn't need to go and attack other people.
Right, and especially using a parliamentary privilege to name people, whom he shouldn't actually be. He wouldn't have been able to do it outside Parliament.
And for only the second time in history, the Speaker has entered a correction into the Hansard, saying that Winston Peters was wrong. I think that's extraordinary.
Yeah, really extraordinary. So, one of the things that you're known for, and I think you'll go down in history, is for the euthanasia bill, or as it's known as the end of life choice bill.
Yeah.
Right. Is it true that you actually passed up a chance to be a cabinet minister because you wanted to work on this?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. So John Key called me in about 2016 and said, right, I want to make you a minister. So, you get a big pay rise and the limo and the title, honourable and all that. But I realised that lots of people have been ministers and achieved nothing. Winston Peters is a good example. I wanted to get this bill done so I could really say I'd put New Zealand first and done something for New Zealand. And I think that, it's shameful that we let people die with indignity and agony when there's other countries have shown there are laws that can let them choose. So we're going a long way with this. And I think it was worth turning down a minister so New Zealanders can have their say at a referendum on this bill.
Right. Which reminds me of, a few years ago, you were actually in the news, for a long time because you supported that little child, Anna Carolina Burcham. Yeah. So tell us about it, because I saw some articles and I remember, seeing you actually going out of your way as an MP to support her case. So what was it about?
Well, I still remember on the 28th of December 2015, just between Christmas and New Year, I came into the office to see Peter and Eleni, Anna Carolina's parents. And I've been fighting for them ever since. And it's been very uphill and very challenging. But fundamentally, if you're a member of Parliament, then you're one of the people. The Parliament gives the government the permission to take taxpayer money. And the only recourse you have as a local person is to make sure your MP gets you value for money in return for those taxes.
Right.
So this family paid their taxes all their lives. Their daughter was very ill, went to the hospital, and first they wanted to turn her life support off and let her die. They were wrong. The family challenged that. Then when I got involved, they wanted her to be able to move home and live a normal life. It's costing $1.5 million a year to keep her in the Starship Hospital. The hospital wouldn't let her move home. Eventually we won that battle. It went on for years. And now she lives at home and their life's a lot less stressful.
Right.
But still the battle continues. And we can't go into all the detail, but the Starship Hospital is a wonderful institution. But some of the people there have acted, in my view, disgracefully.
Right. So you did this purely as an MP? Because you felt it was a duty to help your constituents.
So that's your number one duty, is to be a representative of your constituents.
Right.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about free speech. Now, you have been a great advocate of free speech, and where do you think this stands now? Because on the one hand, we have the left, or the people from the left-wing dispensation, saying that free speech is in danger. And on the other hand, you find them that they already try to stifle any voices which don't agree with their viewpoint or their worldview. What do you have to say about that?
Well, look, the first thing I'd say is that I think one of the biggest, probably the biggest challenge we face today is not actually health or welfare or education or COVID or crime. It's a problem that's underneath all of that. And that is our ability to solve problems in a civilized way and disagree without attacking each other.
Right.
Because at the moment, if you are on the wrong side of an issue, then people don't just say, I disagree, they attack you personally.
Yeah.
And they attack your identity, and they say, oh, well, you're a white person, you don't know, or you're an Indian person, you have this view, whatever. We've got to get the ability to have civilized debate back.
Right.
But what would make it far worse is the government getting involved by actually having something like the Human Rights Commission that can tell you what you can and can't say.
Right.
And because how do you know what is hate speech?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of opinion.
Right.
So if you have a different opinion from the Human Rights Commission,
Yeah.
they can lock you up or put you in jail.
Right.
You know, and those people have no sense of humor.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I mean, some of the things which have been happening over the last few weeks, especially the government's handling of COVID. What do you have to say about that? I mean, for me, it looks like it's a series of disasters, one after the other.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, look, let's say we need our government to succeed.
Yeah.
So we're not sitting here saying they're all useless. They've got some things right.
Yeah.
You look at how much testing they're doing now.
Yeah.
25,000 tests in a day.
Yeah.
That's far better than 3 or 4 months ago when they were only doing 1,000 a day. So there's some things they're doing right.
Right.
But if I was to have a criticism, it's that there hasn't been enough sense of urgency.
Yeah.
So you go back to the 28th of January, I said, let's close the border for China,
Yeah.
because they'd do it to us.
On 20th of January.
28th of January.
Okay.
26th of February,
Yeah.
I said the Prime Minister should come back from Fiji.
Right.
There's a big problem brewing.
Yeah.
At that point, it was in 33 countries,
Right.
and the share market had fallen off a cliff. I said, this is serious. The Prime Minister needs to get back here. She stayed in Fiji.
Yeah.
So, then we finally got to the lockdown, and I called for that 2 days before it happened. But then, as soon as the lockdown happened, the cases flatlined.
Yeah.
And you think that's interesting, because usually there's a 2-week lag.
Yeah.
So clearly the things weren't as bad as we thought when the lockdown happened, but they didn't respond to that.
Yeah.
Then we got rid of it, and they had 3 or 4 months to try and fix it, to get ahead of things, and they didn't do anything. There's no COVID card, no contact tracing. They didn't make better laws. Can butchers open or whatever?
Yeah.
They didn't actually use the time they had to get ahead. So it's a lack of urgency.
Yeah.
And the problem is, if we don't get smart about dealing with this thing, then we just have to have lockdowns whenever there's a small outbreak.
Right, and that's what it looks like. That lockdown is actually the lowest hanging fruit. That's the first go-to.
That's a really good line. Yeah.
Yeah, because one would expect that the 2 months that they had, where everything was fine, they would have actually worked towards setting up some future-proofing it, But apparently nothing was done. Even after, news are broke, all those, stories about the lapses, for border-facing staff and all of that.
Yeah.
Apparently, when they followed up, nothing much was done.
Yeah. So if you look at ACT's approach, we would take what we call a well-being approach to COVID-19.
Yeah.
So you got to think about all the costs. So lockdowns are expensive, I mean, we spent more on this Auckland lockdown than we actually spend on all the pharmaceuticals at Pharmac every year.
Yeah.
So when people say they can't afford the drugs, that's because we keep wasting money. Now, if you take an overall approach, then you say, okay, we want to be like Taiwan. So you've got to have one unit, an epidemic response unit, multidisciplinary public and private sector. You've got to start taking an approach where the government's job is to set good rules of the game, not run everything itself. You've got to have an approach that is risk proportionate. We treat people coming from COVID-ridden countries with poor public health the same as we treat people coming from Taiwan or Samoa that has no COVID. So you've got to change the risk. Then you got to get better technology involved, and then you got to constantly compare yourselves with the best. So we compare ourselves with Victoria. The government says, "Oh, you're lucky you're not Victoria."
That's what she said today.
Yeah, I know. Lucky you're not Victoria. Well, we should be comparing ourselves with the other 6 states that are doing well. Losers compare themselves with losers. Winners compare themselves with winners. And we've been comparing ourselves with losers too long.
That's right. So in your 2014, I think, campaign video, when you first came into Parliament, you mentioned that you got sunburnt doing
door knocking in February.
door knocking in February. Well, the sun is so hot today. I'm sure you'll be sunburned in a few minutes.
Yep.
But are you getting sunburned now? I mean, not now. What I mean is for your campaign. What I mean is, how is the campaign going?
The campaign's going fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously we've had a bit of a change and a delay with this lockdown.
Yeah.
But it means our campaign's going to be better. We're going to be out on our bus tour. We've got a great digital campaign. Yeah. We've got a huge amount of fantastic things going on. Yeah. And I'm really excited.
So if you were to, be the kingmaker, in the next parliament, in the next government, what sort of portfolios would you want to? Hold?
So I'm not so hung up on getting portfolios. I want to be sitting there saying we're independent and we have principles, and if you want us to keep voting for laws, then here's some conditions. You can't raise taxes. You've got to pay off the debt. You've got to have an intelligent approach to COVID. You've got to do something better with firearm laws. And you've got to just start improving the quality of lawmaking and regulations generally.
Right.
So, I'm not there to get the baubles myself. I'm there to grow ACT's team and hold them all accountable, because that voice is needed right now.
Interesting you speak about taxes, because based on the debt, which will be about 53% of GDP, which means that for every dollar that the government earns, 53% will be going to pay off debt. This cannot be done without raising taxes. I mean, what's going to happen? I mean,
I disagree. I mean, the Green Party thinks you've got to raise taxes, but they will raise taxes at any excuse. Labor would probably like to raise taxes, but they're too scared to say it. The ACT Party has shown in our 5-point plan for the economy, how we could actually get back in surplus by 2024, start repaying the debt, and not raise any taxes. But it does mean that you've got to stop some of the more wasteful spending. I mean, you look at this Green School Initiative. This is the Provincial Growth Fund. We've got to stop that. We've got to stop this COVID Recovery Fund, which is just hosing out money for political purposes. So if we stop wasting money, we could actually get back on top of it.
Right. Now, traditionally, the Indian voter, and I say traditionally, I mean from say about 15, 20 years ago, was more of a labor supporter, because they were migrants and many of them were actually in laboring jobs, or maybe in that daily wage kind of jobs. So there was a strong support for labor. But over the last 20 years, we have had a lot of professionals coming in, and also the children of the second generation migrants, and they have different aspirations, and many of them will actually sort of agree with your kind of ideology, which is that liberal capitalism or liberal, right of center politics. What's your message to them, those who are sitting on the fence, who probably don't know much about that?
ACT is the party for entrepreneurs, for people who want to make a difference in their own lives, and people who want to actually make a difference in the lives of those they care about. And immigrating, to a new country, whether it was you or your parents or 2 generations ago, is the most entrepreneurial activity there is. You're risking everything to go to an unfamiliar land, in New Zealand's case, at the edge of the earth. If you have made that leap, then you're an entrepreneur, you're a self-starter, and you're an ACT person, because our policies are all about empowering people and enabling people to make a difference in their own life, not be fodder for politicians and their grand government schemes. And I find increasingly in our polling and research, more and more of the Indian community are actually starting to resonate with ACT's message.
David Seymour, it was wonderful talking to you. We had we spoke on so many things, and it really was enjoyable talking to you and knowing your views and what shaped your values. And wonderful, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And all the best to your campaign.
Hey, what a pleasure, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.